Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the California High-Speed Rail Authority. We're very pleased to be here in the great city of San Jose. May I ask the Secretary to please call the roll?
Director Schenk? Here. Vice Chair Richards?
Here.
Director Rossi?
Here.
Director Curtin? Director Lowenthal? Here. Director Camacho?
Here.
Director Miller?
Here.
Senator Bell? Assemblymember Arambula? Chair Richard?
Here. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This is an important meeting for us today, in particular because we'll be reviewing and considering the adoption of the 2018 High-Speed Rail Business Plan to be submitted to the legislature. And what I'd like to do first and foremost, as we move to public comment, is thank the City of San Jose and also the County of San Jose for allowing us to be in these facilities today. We'll be taking public comment. There's a podium here with the lectern, and I would ask people who want to speak to come here. We take public comments in the order in which they're received, but we do start with our elected officials, and it's my privilege to introduce first the Mayor of the City of San Jose, the Honorable Sam Liccardo. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, a point, if I may, before we do that,
yes.
To recognize our former chairman, Mr. Rod Dearden, who's here in the audience. He may be speaking, but I think we ought to just acknowledge his presence and thank him for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Mayor Liccardo, good morning.
Good
afternoon.
Mr. Chair. Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the California High-Speed Rail Authority Board, and CEO Brian Kelly, welcome to San Jose and to Santa Clara County and to Silicon Valley. Here in San Jose, we continue to be some of your biggest cheerleaders. We are strong supporters of the California High-Speed Rail system as the future backbone of an integrated state rail network. We share your vision for high-speed rail's role as a catalyst for statewide and local economic development, and as a means to expand opportunity for tens of thousands of residents in the Central Valley seeking a share of the prosperity here in Silicon Valley. Undoubtedly, this board has been greeted, implored, and even feted by many mayors before, up and down the state, expressing understanding and appreciation of the board's fiscal and temporal constraints, but nonetheless insisting that their city is deserving of special and unique attention. You may have grown bored of these tiresome entreaties. Naturally, I see no reason why today should be any different. So allow me to bore you for a moment so you'll know why San Jose should merit your special and unique attention. Besides being the largest city north of Los Angeles, San Jose contains the longest segment of high-speed rail construction spanning some 21 miles of any city in Phase 1. Most of those 21 miles travel through densely populated neighborhoods. We also host a unique opportunity at Dearden Station, named after the young man that Member Schenk just identified, our region's future Grand Central Station. That station will, at full build-out over the next decade, become the busiest multimodal station in the western United States, with more than 600 trains arriving daily, high-speed rail, BART, an electrified Caltrain, Amtrak, ACE, and light rail, not to mention bus rapid transit and other services. I'd like to acknowledge that the authority has made very important efforts to reduce the impacts of high-speed rail and the project across much of our city, particularly by advancing an Act-grade blended alignment within the draft 2018 business plan, along with many critical segments of the Union Pacific right-of-way. We also appreciate the more recent revisions to the business plan released just in the last few days concerning the commitment of the High-Speed Rail Authority to work with local agencies to ensure that Diridon Station becomes a world-class, high-quality intermodal hub, as well as with investments in platforms, tracks, and maintenance facilities along this alignment. As we work with your staff in the months ahead, we look forward to working collaboratively to accomplish 3 critical objectives for our city. First, the city has funded an independent consultant to prepare alternative alignment concepts, and we have vetted those concepts with your staff, generally receiving positive feedback concerning their feasibility. We seek to advance those concepts into the authority's environmental alternative process for full study. Second, we seek the authority's partnership in developing a more detailed budget plan to achieve the necessary investment for a high-quality, context-sensitive system here in San Jose and for a world-class station at Diridon, one that seamlessly integrates high-speed rail with connecting transit services and surrounding high-density development and existing lower-density neighborhoods. Third, we wish to have the authority align its planning and environmental process and schedule with the planning partnership already underway in and around the Diridon Station area, such that the results of the Diridon Integrated Station Concept Plan will become ultimately incorporated into your planning and environmental review. We hope to formalize our relationship as we work through these various options, perhaps through a memorandum of understanding, and we look forward to continued partnership on this transformative project. Thank you very much for indulging me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And while normally it's, Mr. Mayor, normally we simply allow the public to speak here, but I do, since you have an obligation with your city council, just want to make one response to the comment you just made, which is that we very much appreciate the long-standing relationship that we've had with your city. And we appreciate the comments that you've made here today, as well as the formal comments that you've made. We view the city of San Jose as a key partner in our efforts to develop the statewide high-speed rail system. And with everything going on at Diridon Station, which we agree is going to be one of the most important transit hubs in the West, this is going to be a critical node for passengers across the state. So I want to assure you that in response to your letter, where you asked for our collaboration in establishing a process to address the items that you laid out here today, that we are very interested in working with you on that. And in line with your request, I'll be asking our staff to work with your staff and our partners at Caltrain and VTA to develop an agreement that will establish a formal process, a collaborative framework that can help us align the strategies for the ongoing development of the system. As you know, we have strict environmental deadlines that we have to meet, but we think that within that framework, we're committed to working with you to make sure that all of our efforts are mutually considered and carefully sequenced. So I just want you to rest assured that the city's input is very important to us. We look forward to working with you, and we'll be responding to your letter in a way that I think will establish an even stronger working partnership here to address the issues that are important to this community. So I want to thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Next, we're going to have, again, starting with our elected officials, public officials, the Honorable Mike Murphy, the Mayor of Merced. He'll be followed by the Honorable Henry Perea, former supervisor from Fresno County. Mayor Murphy. Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon, Chairman Richard, members of the board, Mr. Kelly. I'm Mayor Mike Murphy from Merced, home of the University of California, Merced, the only University of California in the Central Valley. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to address you briefly regarding the 2018 business plan. In particular, I'd like to thank Mr. Kelly for his recent visit to Merced, and thank Chairman Richard for making himself available over the course of many months to understand the importance of Merced to high-speed rail. The city of Merced has been and continues to be an ardent supporter of the authority's goal to unify Northern and Southern California with high-speed rail service. We submitted written comments to the business plan during the comment period, and we are pleased that many of the comments that we made were taken into consideration in the revised version. In particular, we're pleased that there is recognition that the state is making significant investments to extend the Altamont Corridor Express train to Merced, and that high-speed rail will have increased ridership as a result of ACE ridership when Merced is connected. And thank you again for your consideration of our requests.
Thank you, Mayor. And we'll be addressing at least one other issue related to Merced as the staff goes through final changes to the document. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Supervisor Perea, followed by Tony Boren from the Fresno Council of Governments.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, great to see you today. It's hard to believe that 9 years ago, Fresno County came together and formed a coalition called Fresno Works that had one goal, and that goal was to make sure that our region supported high-speed rail to the fullest extent possible. And I'm proud to say 9 years later, our support is there. And we stand here today supporting the business plan that you'll be advancing to the state legislature. But we also wanted to talk to you about the maintenance facility. You know, that is a facility that's been an ongoing competition. Fresno County has been very involved in, and part of our group that we'll be presenting today will be updating you on where we're at with that plan. But what I really want to underscore when you get the booklet that we'll be passing out on page 3 and 4 are 2 letters. One is signed by me and Supervisor Anderson. We were both at the time co-chairs of Fresno Works, and I was on the Fresno Council of Governments, which represents 15 cities and the county of Fresno. And Mayor Swearingen also submitted a similar letter, basically both saying that not only do we support high-speed rail in every way, shape, or form, but that we as a community were putting our money where our mouth was. We know that part of the plan is to seek investors, and we know areas have provided land opportunities for maintenance facilities, just as Fresno has. But what's unique about our proposal, and we believe we are your first financial partner outside the state and federal government. Fresno County committed $25 million to the maintenance facility for you as a board to use as you see fit if we're selected. So we just want to make that very clear that we stand with you not just as a partner in support of making this project happen for California, but for making sure that we hopefully are selected for the maintenance facility. So I'll just close by saying the other team members will be speaking, but we know over the years it's been a very difficult road. We know decision making takes time, but we want to emphasize is that the time has come for a decision to be made on the maintenance facility, and we hope that you make it soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Tony Boren, followed by the Honorable Oliver Baines.
Good afternoon, Tony Boren, Executive Director, Fresno Council of Governments. The booklet in front of you, you'll see it's titled Fresno Works. I'm going to tell you exactly why the Fresno site works in terms of the future heavy maintenance facility. The Fresno County site is strategically located in the center of the overall California high-speed rail system, adjacent to the city of Fresno, the 5th largest city in California. We have a large flexible site, 320 plus or minus acres, which abuts the proposed high-speed rail alignment. Although currently located in the county of Fresno, the proposed site is within the city of Fresno's sphere of influence planning boundary and is planned for heavy industrial uses in the city of Fresno. The city of Fresno and the county of Fresno are both strongly supportive and fully committed to working cooperatively to develop the high-speed rail heavy maintenance facility. Real estate options to purchase the proposed site have been acquired for the parcels making up the HMF site. The proposed site has all of the existing utilities necessary to serve the site. Sewer, water, PG&E, stormwater drainage, all of it is there, ready to be put to use. The entire site is virtually flat, minimizing the need for filter cut areas, presenting an excellent building surface with excellent soil conditions for construction of the facility. In addition, there are no natural rivers or irrigation canals traversing the site. The site has no environmental issues such as underground storage tanks and no evidence that sensitive biological issues would prevent issuance of development entitlements and building permits. The proposed Fresno County site has outstanding transportation access. The site is adjacent to 2 main state highways, State Route 99 and 41, which will serve as the transportation backbone for accessing the site. The site also has direct access from 3 local Fresno County east-west arterials and Cedar Avenue, which runs parallel to the site on a north-south axis. It's also a designated truck route in Fresno County. Now, this is important because the availability of all these transportation facilities will allow ease of movement for the construction materials that are going to be involved with this facility. And lastly, the Fresno County site would provide the High-Speed Rail Authority with a maintenance facility at the north end of 110 miles of relatively flat, straight track, ideal for a testing track. So I will stop there and turn it over to Leanne. Or Oliver.
Yeah. Councilmember Baines, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, to the board and the CEO. Thank you for giving me just a few moments here today. And listen, I'm obviously here to advocate for Fresno. And all I want to do is take a moment to call your attention to our history with this project and your board. You heard a moment ago Supervisor Perea talk about the fact that we formed Fresno Works over 9 years ago. You also, I'll call attention to a resolution of support from the city of Fresno that we adopted just a couple of years ago. You will notice that both mayors we've had since the high-speed rail, since Proposition 1A passed, both have supported high-speed rail. The city of Fresno has a history with this project and the support of the project. Dare I say, we are the only city in the entire Central Valley that has taken a public resolution of support for this project. So not only have we been your partner in support, not only have we supported you publicly through our comments and through our administration and through our resolutions, we also have been preparing for the opportunity that we believe will be the greatest opportunity in the United States, in the history of the United States when we talk about transit. The high-speed rail project is a transformative project for this country. Fresno has prepared itself to be the center of the universe for this transformation, and we are ready. And we stand here as a willing partner and have been a willing partner since the beginning. And we hope that as you all make very tough decisions in the future about where to place your heavy maintenance facility, that you understand that we have been here from the beginning and we are prepared, and we are prepared and continue to be your partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Next is Leanne Eager from Fresno Works, followed by Larry Westerland. Oh, next is, you're not Leanne, I can tell that right away.
No, sir. Thank you very much. But
all right, we'll go out of order. We'll start with Larry Westerland. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Larry Westerland. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the City of Fresno, and I'm the project manager for the City of Fresno for the heavy maintenance facility. As you'll have a chance to look at the book that was put together in 2010, you'll see all of the attributes required for the site are there, and it is easily the best site of the proposed sites within the area that they can go into. The one drawback that there was related to the site is that it was controlled by multiple property owners. Under the leadership of Mayor Brand and Mayor Swearingen, the City of Fresno has gone out and acquired 127 acres. We now control 127 acres with option contracts for 2 years on that. We've worked with the property owners, negotiated the price for the sale of those sites, and is now controlled by the city. You already control 30 acres in that subject area. With the 27, you'll have 127. You'll have close to the 160 acres that you need for the heavy maintenance facility. I would note in the map that the area that is controlled is between the alignment, Cedar Avenue, American Avenue on the north, and Clayton Avenue on the south. That $25 million that Measure C and Fresno County Transportation Authority put in for high-speed rail, as Supervisor Perea had indicated, in a partnership with that, has to be spent related to site acquisition, off-site improvements, infrastructure. And we know with that $25 million, high-speed rail will get basically a entitled, improved, shovel-ready site with water to the site, sewer to the site, storm drain, all of the things that you would need to do that, to build that site. The only thing that we would add is we have 1 year left on those option contracts, so we really need to have a decision made by January of 2019, and we wanted to make sure that you were aware. Otherwise, we lose the option contracts, and I'm sure the price of that property will go up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Leanne Eager.
Good afternoon. I'm Leanne Eager, President and CEO of Fresno County Economic Development Corporation. So the book that you have in front of you, it's a remake. I wanted to show you the original, and Mr. Diridon got one of these. This is what we handed out 10 years ago. We said it was a coffee table book. We couldn't afford to do them again, so we apologize. But I thought you might be interested to know what it is that we did. We do have 3 of the original Fresno Works. Supervisor Perea, Tony Barron, and I have been doing this nonstop since 2009. Turned this in 2010. But I think one of the things that hasn't been said yet, and my colleagues have certainly covered a lot, we have been planning for the maintenance facility for 9 years, and not just with land. We have visited 6 different maintenance facilities around the world. We have collected criteria for what kinds of jobs are there. We have looked at curriculum from different colleges to see how we're going to train folks. We have made sure that we looked at maintenance facilities and what was around there so that we knew what kind of businesses that we could attract. We looked at doing a training center around the maintenance facility. And one of the things that Tony and I did 2 weeks ago when we were in Washington, D.C., is we talked to them about the maintenance facility. We talked to them about the California system. We talked to them about the training facility. And I am pleased to say that we got great response from the administration on the California project and what we're doing in Fresno County. So we're really looking at making the maintenance facility not just that, but really the training center for the entire country. And we even talked about if they wanted us to take our show on the road and help other states once they see that they want to copy what we're doing here, that we'd be willing to do that too. So we wanted to make sure you knew that we were ready in all aspects of the maintenance facility and the training facility going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eager. This next speaker, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to mispronounce your name. It's Linda, it's either Cambavan or Cambrarian. Okay. Oh, that's an I at the end. I'm so sorry. My apologies, ma'am.
My name is Linda Cambrari. I live in San Martin. I've attended high-speed rail meetings in San Jose, San Martin, Gilroy, and Morgan Hill. I want you to know, and this is hard to follow all the love that you got from Fresno, but it's a little different. I have a different take. At each of the meetings, you know, with the representatives of the authority, they haven't answered our questions and out lied to us as well. I want to give you a view of what high-speed rail will do to Morgan Hill and San Martin. It's a 3-mile wide valley. It'll be cut in 2. The sound of the high-speed rail in this narrow valley will affect everyone in Morgan Hill and San Martin. The construction will make our commute even worse than the hell it is now. And I'm glad that you're down here. I want you to go on 101 and head to Gilroy at about 3 or 4 in the afternoon and realize that when you're tearing up Monterey, every single car that's on 101, there's an equal amount of cars on Monterey. It's going to be at a standstill. And the fact that only 1% of the cars are going to be taken off the road, it's not going to help our commute in that area. And we're asked to sacrifice our homes, our equity, and our quality of life for what? My suggestion is to take the money from high-speed rail and give it to Fresno and Merced and build up businesses there, or get some of these high-tech companies down there. And I know that's not your job, but wanted to just give you a take of what life is going to be like on South County. The High-Speed Rail Authority, you know, they, I'm running out of time. I did want you to know.
You can finish your comments, ma'am.
I just wanted you to know that I no longer trust, after being at 10 meetings, I no longer trust the High-Speed Rail Authority, and I'm going to do everything I can to stop it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Jerry Brozell, followed by Ivor Sampson.
Thank you. I'm not a politician, so anyway, I want to thank the board for being here and the opportunity to talk to you. It's a thankless job that you go through a lot of times, and I'm probably one of the few people who came here by public transportation, Caltrain and VTA. Those who are against public transportation should ride 100 miles of it sometimes, and maybe they would be in favor of upgrading a lot of it. I favor high-speed rail, and I favor the adoption of the business plan. I've said it many times before. Over 50 years ago, when I was in the Army, I had the opportunity to ride the Japanese Bullet, and I was really impressed, and I thought, gee, in 10 or 15 years we'll have something like that in the United States of America. Okay, guess what? Most of the major countries in the world have built high-speed rail, even Uzbekistan. What can I say? But if you stop and think, it's an important aspect of public transportation. Right now, the mayor of San Jose should have pointed out that to go by Amtrak from San Jose to Los Angeles, it takes 11 hours. With high-speed rail, it'll be under 3 hours, which is a terrific improvement. And it's another thing, it's on my bucket list to ride high-speed rail in California. And look at me, I'm getting old. Please hurry up.
Thank you, sir. Some of us hear that from the governor of the state, too. Ivor Sampson, followed by Kathy Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I represent the Fresno Rescue Mission. I also represent the Bakersfield Homeless Center, and Louise Gill, who is the director of the Bakers Homeless Center, is going to address comments on that, so I'll confine myself just to the Fresno Rescue Mission issue. And that's item number 3 on your agenda, the request to amend a contract or supplement the contract to allow the relocation of G Street in Fresno. As presently situated, G Street bisects the Fresno Rescue Mission campus. The property on the east side of G Street is being acquired by the high-speed rail. We've entered into a possession and use agreement about a month ago, and the buildings or the facilities are being relocated onto the west side of G Street in temporary structures in order to allow the seamless operation of the mission. In order to build permanent structures, we need to have the property that underlies G Street. And that's been part of the negotiations and agreement with the mission and with the city of Fresno. G Street will be relocated, and on the former G Street, that will be land on which the permanent facilities of the mission can be built. So I urge you to adopt the amendment to allow the permanent facilities to be constructed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sampson. I appreciate your patience and hard work on this with our staff. So, Ms. Hamilton, good afternoon, followed by Louise Gill.
Hi, my name is Kathy Hamilton. I'm a resident of California, and I'm also on the board of CCHSR. I wanted to say, first of all, that high-speed rail is a good thing. Concept versus reality, though. That's the problem with the project here. There was Prop 1A that was passed, and frankly, right now, the authority does not have the funding to build one continuous usable segment that can be run without an operational subsidy, which is required from Prop 1A. The project is still developing 119 miles in the middle of a Central Valley. The original plan was 130, and at 120 million per mile, that makes a difference as well. Wanted to say that the peer review group addressed the legislature about the business plan and offered the rail authority and the legislature 4 choices. I'm not going to go through them, but they range from end it all to get them the proper funding and let them continue. The only thing that has changed with this project over the years is the cost has risen tremendously. I wanted to remind the board, in March of 2012, just before the funding, former Senator Joe Simidian, now a county supervisor, summed it up in a Senate meeting that Mr. Richard and Member Rossi were present at. And here's what Simidian said. I sat at the same desk in January 2010 with Senator Lowenthal and raised these same issues with your predecessors. The core proposal is the primary expenditure of $6 billion for a non-high-speed rail conventional system of 130 miles in a low ridership area with no guarantee of additional funding for that project. I just have about...
Go ahead. Go ahead.
A project which has minimal independent utility, which our legislative analyst has characterized as very modest. Now, I wouldn't be so anxious about the lack of funding, a funding guarantee for the future, if we were going to spend $6 billion on a hot damn great improvement to public transportation from California, but we're not. That's the issue, and sprinkling a little dough in Northern California and Southern California and talking about plans for a decade hence, which may or may not be realized if the funding is or isn't forthcoming. We've talked about the political uncertainty which is attached to that funding, and it doesn't obviate the concern many of us have about a $6 billion project for 130 miles of conventional rail in a low ridership area. What he has worried about has happened from 2010 to 2018, and I will end with one sentence that Senator Simitian delivered July 6, 2012, when he voted no for the funding for the first 130 miles. This is the wrong plan in the wrong place and at the wrong time. It is irresponsible. This is my last sentence. It is irresponsible and near criminal, if there was a law forbidding it, for the authority to continue to take property, harming people's lives, spending billions for a project that'll never be fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Louis Gill, followed by Swanee Edwards.
Chairman, members of the board, my name is Louis Gill. I am the CEO of the Bakersfield Homeless Center. In February of 2015, we were notified by the High-Speed Rail Authority that you were going to acquire our entire campus. 3 years later, what have we seen is a marked and continued decrease in support for our facility from our public. We have donors that traditionally would have supported us, especially in capital needs, that are, quite frankly, telling us they're going to sit on the sidelines until we know our future. They're very interested in what is to come. They're not interested in investing in what is to be torn out. So what's happened in that time? We've got an evaporative cooler that just rotted through a metal roof. We have a sewer line that has collapsed, and we've had to close a bathroom in one of our buildings. Forced heating in another office building is no longer available. We've had to cap a gas line. We're a special use nonprofit. We sleep 174 homeless individuals, typically over 100 children a night. We serve more kids than adults every day. We can't continue to endure a loss of ability to serve with no sunset in sight. It's impossible to plan right now, and it's impossible to tell our donors what's going to change. We thought that we were going to get some relief. From February of 2015 till September of 2017, we worked closely with high-speed rail staff on the concept of early acquisition, but in September of 2017, we received a letter from the authorities saying that that was no longer a discussion. We have sought our elected officials for some assistance in this at the urging of Assemblymember Rudy Salas. We have provided comment on the business plan. That's what I handed out to you is our comments, and I request the board to direct the staff to again open that conversation about early acquisition for our facility.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. I know this is a difficult issue, and I know that our staff is paying attention to it, but I appreciate your coming here today. Thank you. Swanee Edwards, followed by Elizabeth Scanlon.
Good afternoon, High-Speed Rail Authority. I don't represent a political agenda. I don't represent a big company. I'm simply a mother of 4, grandmother of 7, living in Morgan Hill for the last 30 years. For over a decade, the High-Speed Rail Authority has kept our community of Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy hostage with all of these plans for a high-speed rail line down through our beautiful, unique, narrow valley where wildlife runs from one set of foothills in the Diablos to the Santa Cruz Mountain foothills. We have been unable to have high-speed rail define an alignment through our area. We have not been able to plan for our future, and this has been going on since we heard that high-speed rail was coming down our valley. Why it isn't going through the Altamont Pass, it just escapes me. You're going down a valley that is unique, beautiful, and our residents are very proud of our community. And then there are the other considerations. We're rebuilding the largest dam in Santa Clara County in Morgan Hill, the Anderson Dam, because of the earthquake considerations. It's a very seismically active place. We also have the noise, speed concerns, and the fact that high-speed rail isn't going to do anything to solve our horrid commute to San Jose. We do want electrified Caltrain. This is all we've wanted for decades and decades. I really wish you would reconsider not only stopping your plans for South County, but ending this boondoggle altogether. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is Elizabeth Scanlon from Caltrain, followed by Rod Diridon.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Thank you for having me. I'm Elizabeth Scanlon. I am the Director of Planning for Caltrain, and I'm pleased to be here today to offer some comments on the 2018 draft business plan. First, on behalf of our entire agency, we want to again thank the authority for its support of our electrification project. The more than $700 million provided by the authority is a critical foundational investment for the Peninsula Corridor to finally realize electrified train service, which is a path to fully electrifying and converting from our existing diesel service to electric trains, and also supports the state rail plan goals. Caltrain is very supportive of the vision offered by this business plan. As you know, our corridor will be blended by offering both commuter and high-speed services between San Francisco and San Jose. We're very encouraged by the business plan vision regarding electrifying beyond our territory from San Jose all the way to Gilroy. Caltrain is also embarking on a business plan of our own, which is in part a long-range service planning project for the Peninsula Corridor, and the authority is a vital partner in our doing that. The process will span about 12 months and will include, hopefully, the Caltrain board taking an action around the future service vision for the Caltrain corridor. There are also several major complementary planning projects in process. You heard Mayor Liccardo reference the San Jose Diridon Integrated Station Concept Plan, and we're doing a similar process in San Francisco around the San Francisco Station at Salesforce Transit Center. We'd like to thank the authority staff. We work very closely and see a lot of them for their continued collaboration. We know there's a lot of work yet to be done to fully realize the blended service. We acknowledge that we also need to jointly support one another through our required processes, including the environmental clearance. We stand ready to continue our collaboration and our working relationship to jointly deliver integrated rail service on the Peninsula Corridor. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Ms. Scanlon. Rod Diridon, followed by Elizabeth Alexis.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. General Manager, being here is kind of like Yogi said, deja vu all over again. And that being not only having sat up there as a board member, but also sat up there as you are sitting today. And we first have to welcome you here. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us in Santa Clara County and recognize how unique linchpin this area is for the high-speed rail program. Let me give you only one bit of data, and then I'll close because you're very busy and we've talked a lot. According to Caltrans, the last year they have data for is 2016. 37,000 cars a day came in to this valley from Central Valley on Highway 152. 140 some odd thousand a day came into this valley on Highway 580, 680. Those cars would have the opportunity of otherwise taking high-speed rail. In cars, they're taking 2.5 to 3 hours per direction, driving terrible roads, $4 a gallon gasoline, having no lifestyle. They get home after the babies have played their Little League games and they come to work and they're exhausted And instead, the timetable time from Fresno to the downtown station, whatever that station's name is 51 minutes.
It's not a forgettable name.
51 minutes compared to 2.5 to 3 hours, and then a short shuttle ride from the downtown station to your employment. And which would you choose? There's going to be a lot more than 1% change in traffic patterns, and it's going to help the people in Morgan Hill and Gilroy in terms of taking pollution out of their valley. So please build it as fast as you can so Jerry and I can ride it.
Thank you. Elizabeth Alexis, followed by Roland LeBrun. Ms. Alexis, good afternoon.
I have some handouts.
Okay, we'll ask the board secretary to take those from you and distribute them. If you want to wait till that's point.
Sure.
Why don't we grab half of those so we can just... Okay, Ms. Alexis.
Good afternoon, board. Some of you are familiar faces. Welcome to the newer members. It's been a while since I've spoken in front of you. I'm Elizabeth Alexis from a group called Californians Advocating Responsible Rail Design, and we too have been looking at this and working on this project since 2009. So we've seen a couple of business plans, and we would say this particular business plan seems more of a status update than an actual new plan. I mean, fundamentally, it calls for carrying on until and unless money falls from the sky or from the California legislature. I have sent, I have a couple of pages for you. We sent some longer comments by email. You'll get these with some other attachments. There are a couple reasons why we think even though the status update is not quite accurate, we've attached the cash flow assumptions that are in your plan that take your 2017 costs into year of expenditure ones. And they assume that a lot of money, a lot more than would come from getting the cap and trade money will appear very soon. For instance, you're assuming that $7.6 billion will be spent on this project just in FY 21-22. And $10.6 billion in FY 22-23, which is an assumption you may want to look at. The other thing that we these are the plans right now for Gilroy. You'll see they're literally sketched on a piece of scrap paper. We received these through public records. There are about 10 pages that comprise the current San Jose to Gilroy alternative. We would suggest that a business plan for a project of this magnitude should probably have more than that. Anyway, I mean, our bigger picture view is it is time to have a plan. Every assumption that underlies the current plan is no longer true. All right, anyway, we can continue this conversation, but that's the idea, is what is the plan? Everybody deserves to know. The homeless shelters deserve to know. The people who live in Morgan Hill deserve to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alexis. Roland LeBrun.
Thank you, Chair Richard and members. I had not planned to address the authority today. However, having seen Ms. Leanne Eager's presentation on the Fresno maintenance facility, I'm here to voice strong support, and I believe they've got a video that I'd like to share with you, so I will yield my time to Ms. Eager.
Actually, I'm sorry, but and with all due respect, Leanne, we We don't do that. So if we start down that road, then everybody's going to be yielding to everybody else. So
I wasn't actually going to speak.
Okay, so I'm not going to yield. I'd just like to show the video.
I'm sorry?
I'm not going to lead to Ms. Eager. I would just like to show the video.
Oh, show the video? Okay. How long is it?
1 minute.
All right. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Offering the promise of a brighter tomorrow, California's high-speed rail system and related heavy maintenance infrastructure will provide significant economic benefits to our region that will serve as a game changer for the Fresno community and the San Joaquin Valley region. Working together with the California High-Speed Rail Authority, the Fresno County region is working collaboratively to create a system and maintenance facilities that will truly be a global showcase for high-speed rail, drawing investment and commerce from around the world and making Fresno the epicenter for high-speed rail in this country.
Come to America. They come to America today.
So I'd like to have closing comments in one sentence.
Go ahead.
I'm working on a document. It's going to take me under 2 or 3 months to complete. And once you receive that document, you will understand why that location is absolutely the right location for the maintenance facility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. LeBrun. Okay, that concludes our public comment period. I want to thank all the commenters, particularly those who came from long distances to present your remarks today. With that, the public comment period is closed, and we will move to the regular agenda. The first item in the regular agenda is the consideration of the minutes from the April 17th board meeting. Do I have a... Okay, it was moved by Director Rossi, seconded by Director Camacho. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Director Schenck?
Yes.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Rossi? Director Lowenthal? Director Camacho?
Yes.
Director Miller? Yes. Chair Richard?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 2, which is the consideration of the 2018 business plan, and I'll turn that over to our CEO, Brian Kelly. Mr. Kelly.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. Today is the day we hope to adopt the business plan, and I'm going to go through a quick summary of where we are, the steps we've taken, and what's before the board today for its adoption, as well as some clarification points that have come in since the draft plan came out on Friday, and we'll just roll through those for the board's consideration for adoption. So first, just by way of reminder, this business plan is required under law, Public Utilities Code Section 185.033. At the conclusion of a 60-day public comment period, which concluded on May 7th, we've used public comments we've received, more than 500 now, to guide changes to the draft document, which again we've released publicly in sort of draft final form on Friday, May 11th. As I said, we released those on Friday. That's been reviewed by, I know, the board and others, and that is what we have before you today. There are 3 documents that have been provided for the board's consideration today. The first is, of course, the staff recommended edits, which you've seen, which is a chart document that rolls through how staff has proposed to accommodate public comments we've received. So that looks like that. We have an errata sheet that is limited to more technical clarification points, grammatical changes, things like that that are in the plan. That looks like this. And then, of course, you've all seen a copy of this, the public has as well, of the final draft plan before you. So those are the elements that the board has before it today. Before I go further in this summary of what's before you and our actions today, I do want to say a big thank you to the team within the High-Speed Rail Authority that worked to get us here. This process is intense, it is painstaking, and it took a phenomenal team both on the authority side and our consultant side working together to put this draft together, to painstakingly go through the comments we've received and to present what we have presented for you, or what we are presenting for you today. So again, I just want to start by thanking everybody for the great effort to get us here. As I said, the draft plan was originally issued on March 9th. The Board of Directors received comments at 2 public hearings on March 20th in Sacramento, again on April 17th in Los Angeles. And we received further comments from the legislature through 3 legislative hearings, including both policy and budget fiscal committees. As I mentioned a moment ago, citizens and stakeholders and agencies submitted some 500 comments. Some comments are addressed in the revised draft plan. Other comments have been or will be through other means. And I think primarily what I'm after there is we received a lot of comments about environmental alignments. We don't address those typically in the business plan, but we work those through a very public process and go through that in the public environmental process. So that's an example of something that's, while we receive a lot of comments on those, they're not included in this plan. As was stated originally in the 2016 plan, and remains a sort of driving principles and objectives for the authority when we're operating in a constrained funding environment, which we have been since the inception of this plan, and we continue to, is that there are 3 key principles that guide us. And the first is that we initiate high-speed rail service in California as soon as we possibly can. We'll make strategic concurrent investments that will be linked over time to provide mobility, economic and environmental benefits at the earliest possible time, and position ourselves to construct additional segments as further funding becomes available. Simply put, we don't have, and we have never had, all the money to build all we want when we want to build it, and so we construct in segments that we link together over time. The implementation strategy that we outline in this plan first includes meeting our commitment to our federal partners, our primary investment partner, which is the federal government, to complete the 119 miles under construction and get the environmental clearances done for all of Phase 1 by 2022. Extend the Silicon Valley to Central Valley line, really for the first time in this plan, to connect San Francisco and Bakersfield. And of course, as we'll get into in a moment with some additional comments, be clear that our intent and our goal remains, as it was in 2016, to connect to Merced as part of that valley-to-valley service. Invest funds to develop 224 miles of high-speed rail-ready infrastructure on 2 lines, one in the Central Valley, one in the Silicon Valley and Bay Area, for operations perhaps as soon as 2026 and 27. That is some further analysis of those options is ongoing with our early train operator, and we'll be incorporating that analysis into our project update report, which we reported to the legislature in March of 2019. Complete the project development work for the Pacheco Pass tunnels and the extension to Merced. Invest remaining Prop 1A bookend funds in Southern California along the Burbank to Anaheim corridor. This plan does incorporate the investment of $423 million into the LA Union Station project, which is coupled with a prior investment of $77 million for the Rosecrans-Mark grade separation, which we just reached in a formal agreement with the LA Metro on a couple of weeks ago. And then finally, we would continue to be in a position to leverage state funding to access other federal, state, or private sector funding opportunities as we go forward. On that last point, I think it's just worthwhile to note that some things have changed since 2008, and they're all not in the negative. We have also garnered additional federal and state funds dedicated to this project that put us in a position to leverage those funds for partnership funding as we go forward. This program does discuss the program's challenges. We have a chapter that's dedicated to the lessons learned through our early construction contracts in the Central Valley. We talk about those, and we talk about how we will implement some of the lessons we learned there as we go forward on next steps in construction contracts, primarily making sure that we have a better command of right-of-way and other risk issues before we go to construction, so that we can better manage and mitigate the risk with the construction projects going forward. We'll also take steps to, as I said, take steps to ensure that risks are identified, mitigation strategies are pursued, and we continue to institute organizational improvements to enhance the authority's capacity as a project delivery organization. As you know from our prior hearings, we have brought in a new Chief Operating Officer. We made some management moves surrounding the management of the right-of-way activities now, and we continue to move forward in that direction. We'll be talking more to the board about that in June and August hearings. And of course, we outline strategies to seek additional funding to complete the program. There are several comments we've received, some big, some small. We've incorporated what we thought was appropriate in the business plan, and I would describe them as being roughly in the five following areas. We did get comment on funding and financing, both from the legislative side as well as from our peer review group and from the public generally. And so we have incorporated language into the draft plan that provides more clarity on the need for additional funding, where we are on dedicated funds to the project now, and an approach going forward. We're outlining how we may leverage what we have to find additional funds and to deliver the system and the timing of when that financing would be required. This was also part of our legislative back and forth, particularly around the financing of cap-and-trade revenues, when we would seek legislative authority for that, when we would want to see that done so that we can meet project delivery schedules, and that is something we've articulated a little more clarity on in this draft plan. Peer review group and others talked about expanding the role of the early train operators. We've incorporated that in the draft as well, expanded discussion on the ETO's role at this time, as well as their role as we work together going forward. City of Merced has been a big issue here, and again, we've reiterated in this plan our commitment and our goal to incorporate Merced as part of the V2V service. We've identified that there is a funding challenge there that we have to deal with going forward, but that we've indicating it's an important element in the valley-to-valley service. And I would include in our analysis of what might be an early Central Valley line, we're also incorporating further analysis of whether Merced, construction all the way to Merced will be part of that process, part of the what we may ultimately open. San Francisco to Los Angeles trip times, again, led mostly by guidance from our peer review group, but also others. There was some adjustments to the trip times based on the further development of the project. And we incorporated those changes between the draft and the final plan, and those trip times were corrected, forecasts were updated, and that's reflected here in the final plan. And then finally, we've identified the key challenge to getting the valley-to-valley done as completing the tunneling work through the Pacheco Pass. We were asked broadly to expand more on the how we will approach that, what kind of expertise we have available to us now, what kind of expertise we'd like to bring in to guide us on both tunnel design, procurement opportunities, and cost and further design issues. And so we've expanded on that discussion in the draft as well. So today's board meeting, with respect to all of the changes we made, we'll focus on the following elements. The board will consider the comments from the public on the proposed changes to the draft 2018 business plan, consider the proposed staff recommended edits, provide additional clarification or changes, propose any additional language to be included in the revised plan. And then between now and June 1st, We will incorporate the board's direction at the staff level and prepare a final 2018 business plan for submittal to the legislature by June 1st of 2018, which is our requirement under current law. So that's what I have before you. There are a couple of specific areas that since the draft final plan was released publicly on May 11th, we have heard from some members of the board to clarify a couple of points in elements throughout the letter. I would describe these most as technical clarification points. I guess I would say errata qualified sort of points that are important, but for clarity's sake, and that we would propose the board to adopt. You have a copy of those on the dais now, and just rolling through what we've received, we have about 7 in total. In essence, it's to be clear. I'll go through each. Board Member Rossi and I had a discussion about some of the funding and financing language that's used, and make sure we're very clear in our language and more precise in our language. So the first is, even in the letter from the CEO, we can be a little bit imprecise, and there's a suggestion that we are very clear that while we're seeking to leverage state funding committed to the project, and we want to pursue additional federal funding or financing and potential private financing to invest in the development of the high-speed rail system, just to clarify what we're after from our various partners. Chairman Richard and I had a discussion about the description of the goal to get to Merced, and we had said prior, connecting Merced as part of the initial line remains a high priority. The suggestion is to be clear that we are still aligning with our 2016 goal, that in this 2018 business plan we reiterate our commitment to the goal to extend to Merced as part of the opening of the valley-to-valley service, and as in 2016, funding for that connection still must be identified. So we maintain the same commitment or objective or goal as we described in the 2016 plan. On page 37, there's a reference to whether cap-and-trade funds that we are identifying for the project now would fall based on when we go into financing, and the term "would fall" is not the right term, so we are clarifying that, and by saying if financing is not accessible, cap-and-trade proceeds through 2030 will range between, and we lay out the ranges instead of suggesting we already have something in hand that we would lose. Again, these are mostly clarifying points. Page 37, there's a simple footnote that describes the funding available on a chart, and instead of saying that funding is available, including pay-as-you-go through 2023 and surplus cash from debt service from 2024, we simply say the revenues are reflected as cash flow, free cash flow after debt service, period. And so it's a change of the footnote to make sure that the chart is as clear as possible for those reading it. And again, the other two with Mr. Rossi on page 41 and page 44 are quite technical in nature, striking the term "under the right conditions" when we talk about how and when we partner with the private sector, and simply noting that by partnering with the private sector, there may be ways to further refine our cost and schedule certainty to the delivery of the tunnels and other components of the system. And then finally, it's the same issue on page 44. We strike the term "under the right conditions" and simply note that potential private investment through the monetization of future discounted net cash flows, and another list as we lay out 3 key sources of funding to help complete the Phase 1 system. So that's roughly the changes in the funding and financing area and the Merced area. Board Member Richards had pointed out 2 other clarifying issues that we would recommend the board direct staff to make as we finalize this plan, or you consider finalizing the plan. One is on page 54. There's a chart where we describe some of the lessons learned, and we make reference to an incorrect assumption that the authority made that the utilities would cover relocation costs, and we note that we wouldn't make that assumption going forward. As a point of clarity, the issue had more to do with who was performing the work, but not whether the cost would be borne by the utility. It was always our cost to pay for that work, but some question about the scope. So the cost was always to be borne by the authority. The issue was whether it was appropriately estimated based on who was performing the work, and so we would propose to clarify that language and would take direction from the board to do that. And the last piece is on page 51 from Member Richards. We have a picture and a reference to that picture as the San Jose River Viaduct, and if that's the incorrect reference, it should be the San Joaquin River Viaduct. So again, clarifying points, but all points that we would certainly direct staff to make as we make this plan final. With that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude my presentation.
Let me turn to my colleagues, and well, first I want to thank you and the staff for a tremendous amount of work that you have put into this document, and want to express our heartfelt appreciation for that. I know it's been a lot of hours. Let me turn to my colleagues, and I think I'm just going to start down at the end with Director Miller and just come this way for any comments or additional issues that members want to raise. The button that says mic on the right.
Okay, there we go. I don't have any additional comments or questions. I thought the staff did a really good job, and I thank you and applaud you for doing that, making the document more transparent, and definitely dealing with some of the challenges that we have. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Director Rossi.
No, I don't have anything to add other than to also say a thank you to the staff for all the work.
Director Camacho.
You know, one might say that you came in at the right time and right timing, or you might say that you came in at the wrong time because you had this pending 2018 plan. I don't know anyone else that could have pulled this thing together the way you have done with your staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Richards.
I would just reiterate what my colleagues have said, and again, thank you, Brian and the staff. It's an incredibly good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did on this round just want to make sure we were talking about comments, and I was going to give a second round opportunity to board members if they had any broader comments about the program, but if you do, we'll come back to that. So, Director Schenk.
Well, thanks on both scores, both the underlying plan and the edits that you made. Brian, I don't know, I agree with my colleagues here. I don't know who else could have come in at the time that you did and pull this together. I mean, we've been through a number of these business plans, you as secretary and we here on the board. And this is truly so we have many issues ahead of us. We have things that we have to look at very carefully. The financing side of things are still, you know, a big question to a lot of folks in the audience, folks here. But you and your staff did a commendable job, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Director Lowenthal.
Yes, thank you. I especially like the section of lessons learned. I think it's very important because I do remember back in January, some of us were really jolted by the challenges that we learned about so late. And you laid them all out here, and that's very important in the focus on transparency for the entire state and all the people who come to these meetings to really acknowledge what we didn't know then, we do know now, and you're making a tremendous effort to change it and go forward, and I appreciate that. As you know, I'm involved with a big project down south, the Gerald Desmond Bridge, and we too had many of those same challenges with utilities and unknown costs, and sometimes it takes some years to get out of it. So I am really pleased with the plan and the revision, and thank you and your staff.
Thank you.
I was going to make some concluding comments at the end, but let me just see if there are any other First to our CEO, are there any broader statements you want to make about this document or its import before we move to adoption of it?
Only, Mr. Chairman and members, that this is a reflection of where we are in a longer process. We have more work to do, obviously, and we have opportunities to report on our status continuously through project update reports and future business plans. And we will continue to work to refine schedules, cost, scope, all of that as we go forward, and make important organizational improvements to make sure that we are meeting the expectations of the public on this project. And we're committed to doing that, and I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Other statements that members want to make at this time? Well, I'd like to make a couple of concluding remarks before I ask my colleagues for a motion on this. First, once again, to thank Mr. Kelly and the staff for all the work that was done, to thank the members of the public for their input, comments, suggestions, and so forth, which I think have been, as always, are useful to the process. And I just want to make a couple of remarks as we sit here and reflect on where we are at this stage of the high-speed rail development program. And I have to say, I was listening to one of the members of the public speak about the status of the project in 2012. I remember that. It causes a certain amount of post-traumatic stress syndrome to think back to those days. But in fact, I would have to strongly disagree with the argument that was propounded, because I think that tremendous progress has been made. As we sit here today, unlike 2012, to quote Nancy Pelosi, dirt is flying. We have almost 2,000 people working directly on more than a dozen sites. It's transforming the communities in Fresno. There are spot labor shortages of truck drivers and other in an area that had the highest poverty rate in the state and a persistently high unemployment rate. It's exactly the kind of public investment returns that people want to see from infrastructure investments. But more than that, and this was really at the heart of the debate in 2012, more than that, it was an expression by the state of California that we're not leaving parts of our state behind. The Central Valley, if it were its own state, would supplant Mississippi as the poorest state in the United States. And we're not going to leave our fellow citizens behind. We're going to make investments in underinvested areas. The other thing that's changed since 2012 is one of the things that brings us to San Jose today. The explosion of opportunities here in Silicon Valley and the parallel explosion of housing costs and the tremendous challenge of finding a way to sustain the economic engine that is Silicon Valley, an engine not just for the state of California but for the world. We now see the promise of a balance of jobs and housing that perhaps we didn't really see in 2012. And the opportunity to connect areas of our state, including places like Merced, where we have academic institutions, Fresno with Fresno State, Bakersfield, the CSU Bakersfield, to connect those academic institutions and centers of excellence with the Silicon Valley, I think is a tremendously exciting prospect. I want to say two other things. Going back to something that Mayor Liccardo said when he talked about how we'd probably been hearing from mayors up and down the state. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. And I'd ask people to reflect on this. At all levels of government, the people who are closest to the populace and to the concerns of everyday Californians reside in the mayor's chambers in every city up and down the state. And uniformly, mayors, whether it's in Fresno, the current mayor, the prior mayor, Merced, the city manager in Bakersfield, the mayor of Palmdale, successive mayors of Los Angeles, successive mayors of San Francisco, successive mayors of San Jose, have been ardent supporters of bringing high-speed rail to their communities because they understand the benefits of this. And I think if you have to really step back and look at what's important here, you're hearing it in the voice of mayors like Sam Liccardo and others. Finally, I just want to say this about the issue of funding. Also sitting here in San Jose, I was reflecting on something with apologies to my colleagues who always groan when I start a sentence with this subordinate clause, but when I was on the BART board in 1999, I received a call from then Mayor of San Jose, Ron Gonzalez, who said, I'm going to be proposing that we bring BART to San Jose. It was not something BART was pushing. It was the mayor of San Jose who saw that as an opportunity. That was almost 20 years ago. They're still working on funding to get the last leg of it done. The first legs have been done, and that construction proceeded. But infrastructure projects take a long time, number one. And number two, I don't know of any of them that have started with having all the funding in pocket when they did. And our project is no exception to that. This business plan lays out very clearly, and as was stated, the peer review group emphasized as well, there are important funding decisions ahead that need to be made, and we all need to work together to make them at the federal, state, and local level. People often try to remind us of the promises that were made to voters in 2008. One of those promises was that the federal government would continue its historic role of investing in the nation's infrastructure. That promise has not been realized, and it needs to be. So I don't want to go on and on. I just want to reflect on those things as we report to the legislature and the people of California about where we are and where we see ourselves going. And I do think that this document provides a good roadmap for a step-by-step way, first to connect valley to valley and then the rest of the state. It identifies key important infrastructure decisions we have to make, like the tunnels and how they could be funded. And it lays out a path for our policymakers as to how we can accomplish this. But I would just end with this. We're building high-speed rail today. We are going to build high-speed rail tomorrow, and we're going to deliver high-speed rail for the people of California. So with that...
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve the 2018 business plan.
Okay. It's been moved by Vice Chair Richards, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it was seconded by every member of the board. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Director Schenck? Yes. Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Rossi? Yes. Director Lowenthal? Yes. Director Camacho?
Yes.
Director Miller? Yes. Chair Richard?
Yes. Thank you, staff. Thank you all very much. Thank you, colleagues. Okay, with that, we will move to the rest of our agenda, and that will be item 3. Consider amending an agreement with the City of Fresno for the relocation of the G Street and associated utilities necessary for the relocation of the Fresno Rescue Mission.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Hedges, good afternoon.
The thesis of this request is as follows. It's to increase the current agreement with Fresno City with regards to $350,000 by $5,215,000 and to extend its completion date to December 31st of 2020. This will allow basically the relocation of G Street to approximately 60 feet to the east to predominantly to accommodate the relocation of the Fresno Rescue Mission. I remind the board that we currently have an agreement, a separate agreement with regards to the Fresno Rescue Mission, a possession and use agreement for a total of $13 million, which they're currently at $9.4 million expended. So, as I stated, there's approximately 3.9 that will go directly to the city for the relocation of the road, and the city will then contract for approximately $1.3 million for the relocation of predominantly PG&E utilities within that alignment. This agreement is a not-to-exceed agreement, but it is not a final guaranteed amount. Okay, there's a distinction there. As But the agreement does not account for, again, is that final guaranteed amount. There's contingency in the amount in this agreement to approximately, it's a guesstimate of over $300,000 that was included in the city of Fresno's estimate. So.
Thank you, Mr. Hedges. Questions for Mr. Hedges? Director Rossi?
I just want to be clear on this. This says that this is a net zero exercise, but it's only a net zero exercise for the existing budget. With the rebaselining, does it become a net zero exercise by reducing the new number for row by this similar amount?
Yes, sir. We will, this is included in the new baseline. This amount is accounted for in our current budget and is also counted in our rebaseline amount. So we're anticipating this expenditure.
Thank you.
Other questions? Director Miller.
I just have one, which has to do with the, you said it was an estimate, and so I'm assuming that's the city engineer's estimate.
It is, ma'am.
And so when they go out to bid, do you have a timeline for this contract?
I do not have a timeline. I can get back to you.
Would you?
When we anticipate the city will award both to PG&E and to its construction contract.
But they'll bid it first. We'll make sure it's within the budget, and then awarding occurs, correct?
Yeah, that will also allow us then to come back and clarify the remaining contingency that's left.
Okay, thank you.
We'll give you ETCs on all of that estimate to complete.
Thanks.
Okay, other questions? Vice Chair Richards.
Yes, Mr. Hedges, did you say, you said it's a not to exceed number?
Yes,
Does that mean it's an agreed upon not to exceed number between ourselves and the city?
It is a not to exceed a number as specified within the agreement, but it is not, the agreement does not specify that this is a final guaranteed amount. There is a slight distinction between that. This would not preclude, if the city did incur construction costs that were above this amount, from coming back and asking for additional funds.
But the estimate was done by the city, as I understand from reading this.
Excuse me, sir?
The estimate was done by the city, as I understand reading this?
Yes, sir. Estimate was prepared by the city for the city.
How long ago was that estimate done?
I do not have the exact date of that estimate, sir. I'll have to get back to you, but it's a fresh estimate.
I guess I'd just be disappointed if we're relying upon a number that the party in which we're contracting with had provided that estimate and knows best the conditions there, that would come back with a higher number than what they had estimated, especially if it was a current estimate. And I would hope that we're acting on current information here.
I will verify, sir, but I'm reasonably assured that it is.
Okay.
Since
All right.
since they will have to sign this agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Director Shane.
Yeah, I just want to sort of underscore what Member Richard is talking about. It just makes me a little bit uncomfortable that other people are spending our money. And, you know, as I said in the last meeting, trust but verify, and I know, you know, can't believe I quote President Reagan, but really it's very difficult for me to accept someone else saying what something costs without our having some very significant audit and oversight over it.
There was audit and oversight. We did review the city's estimate, and we are confident that the city's estimate is accurate, as estimates can be. It's hard to predict what the market conditions will amount to at time of bid, but we did review the city's estimates.
Good. Yeah, I was going to make a, I'm sorry, go ahead, Vice Chair Richards.
Let me just follow up on that then. Is it our intention then that this will be converted to a fixed price contract prior to the time construction starts?
No, sir, that is currently not in the agreement.
I think that's a really good idea, even though it's mine. It would seem to me that it would be better for us to convert to that at a time before we start construction rather than having you come back in here halfway or three-quarters full telling us we're overpriced.
Yes, sir, we can do that. We can accommodate.
Director Camacho?
Mr. Hedges, we, in the briefing with board members, I raised this question then, I'll raise it one more time, just for clarity. We continue to talk about this being a, almost as though it would be a fixed cost, but yet we play with the word estimate, and the estimate, again, was not done by us. Have we done the value engineering or any of those things that would validate those costs? I know you said that we've reviewed them.
We have reviewed, our engineering department and staff, construction staffs did review these estimates as to verify their accuracy. But did we prepare a separate and distinct estimate, sir? We did not.
Well, I would only suggest then that when you bring us something like this, that we don't confuse the terminology of estimate and a not to exceed cost, because they are distinctly different.
Yes, sir. I'm only referencing the language that's currently in our agreement.
Thank you.
That was a quote from our agreement.
Thank you.
Well, let me just see if I can, you said it was okay, but I just want to make sure, because it probably means an amendment to the motion. What I understand my colleague, Tom Richards, to have asked was that instead of proceeding with this estimate against a hoped-for target, that prior to the execution of the contract, it would be converted to an actual fixed price contract, and that what we would be doing would be authorizing you to complete that process, but to execute a fixed price contract in this area. And I just want to make sure that I heard him correctly, and that when I heard what I thought I heard you say was that we can do that would be acceptable if we made that part of the resolution. But
Yes,
if you have
sir.
concerns,
We can go back to the city and negotiate it with the city. Again, it's just a bilateral agreement that will require their consent.
Sure, I understand. Mr.
How is the contract written? Is the contract written that it is as it is? Or is the agreement we have with the city open to renegotiating everything?
So we'd have to go back, I'm assuming that I have to convey with legal, but my assumption is that we'd have to go back and renegotiate with the city as to accommodate this language in this agreement.
And that's going to buy them more liability and probably raise the cost.
So let me just make a suggestion, if I could.
Yes.
Which is, we're also extending the term of this till December 2020, and I'm assuming the intent is that all this work would be completed, and then the contract would be over, correct?
No, ma'am. My assumption is that what would happen here is that this would allow the city of Fresno between now and 2020, the completion of 2000, to invoice this for the amounts of their construction. That's what this agreement allows us to do.
Right. So instead of renegotiating, I was just going to say that what you would want to do is have the city provide you with the bids so that we know what the lowest responsible bidder is. And if it's higher than this amount, you bring that back to us, because this contract can be terminated as well. So we could hear and then decide what we want to do instead of trying to amend it to take care of all things right now. Yeah. But I do think in the future, since it is going to be bid, that you would have a mechanism for letting the board know that it was within bid sooner than later.
Yes, ma'am, we can do that. That is not an issue. Again, this is a not to exceed amount, so if any amounts the amounts received were below this, then the city would only be able to invoice to the actual amounts of the contract.
I think that we're sensitive about this because we've had other not-to-exceed contracts, and they always go the other direction, and then they come back and ask for more money, and we have no basis on which to refuse it. I would think that what Director Miller said, the city's probably going to contract out for this, so they're going to know in advance of the construction whether or not we're under budget. And
yes,
that's
sir.
the information that we want to be, I would seem to me that we want to feel comfortable with.
Yes, sir, and I agree with you that the definition of transparency is exactly that. There's no issue with doing that.
Okay, so where are we on this now?
So I think it's just, instead of amending the contract and spending that time, we would ask that our staff, once the bid has been received, report back to us and then we'll take up whether or not we need to amend the contract then.
Okay. That's a good, yes, I agree. Okay.
So I move the contract,
With the provision
that staff bring back the bid when it's received by the city. Give us an update.
Okay.
Understood.
Motion as amended has been made by Director Miller. Oh, seconded. Okay. Seconded by Director Rossi. Secretary, please call the roll.
Director Schenck? Yes. Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Rossi? Yes. Director Lowenthal? Yes. Director Camacho?
Yes.
Director Miller? Yes. Chair Richard?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Hedges.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is proposed time-only extension of legal services contract with Nossaman. Mr. Flens?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and board members, as you stated, this is to seek your approval to extend for time only the Nossaman Legal Services contract by 2.5 years out to December 31st, 2020. It will expire at the end of June of 2018. Nossaman continues to provide some very limited but critical legal services to us in the existing 3 design-build contracts and giving us advice about those contracts, since they're the ones that had written those as legal counsel. So we'd like to continue the opportunity to work with them on these contracts as we move toward construction. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Mr. Flens? Okay. Moved by Director Camacho, seconded by Director Lowenthal. Secretary, please call the roll.
Director Schenck? Yes. Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Rossi? Yes. Director Lowenthal? Yes. Director Camacho?
Yes.
Director Miller? Yes. Chair Richard?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our regular agenda. Members, I would like to have a very brief closed session. I think we'll be able to get everybody out of here before 3 o'clock. If we could, and I'm looking to Mr. Drozd, where would a closed session be held?
Directly outside in room 157, just to the left.
Room 150?
157.
Okay, so in 5 minutes, can we convene there? Okay. And then I'll come back and report after the closed session. But thank you. Okay, we're back in session after the closed session. There are no items to report emanating from the closed session. So with that, this meeting of the High Speed Rail Authority Board is adjourned.